Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's guest is Sara Moni. She's a Phoenix-based cosplayer. She specializes in obscure characters, lots of X-Men, and things you've never seen before. She's also a member of the Arizona Avengers, which is a charity Marvel cosplay group. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, Sara.
Thanks for having me, David.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. So how would you describe fandom?
Hey, there's so many things, and I think that's what's so exciting about fandom is that for different people it can mean different things, but overall it's a community. It's just an underlying theme of people that are into the same things, and those things may not be what's a part of the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
We're at a place right now where the two are colliding, and there's a cool collision of older fans and newer fans, that are following just the movies or people that have read just the comics. So there's this good blend, and I mean like a clash or a collision, like in a good way, because you're getting different ideas and new spins on a classic character, and new characters that older fans will enjoy too.
Absolutely, and you're just extending the longevity of those fandoms, say like Star Wars or Star Trek, even things such as like Sailor Moon.
Yes.
Are stuff that new iterations are coming out now and bringing in new people that have never even seen, say, the original Sailor Moon, or knew that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker.
Right, exactly. A lot of Doctor Who fans too, because I mean that's a show, going back multiple decades, where it's like, oh yeah, here's just one show that still has a huge following, but someone's, grandfather, father, and themselves could be watching it and relating to it, depending on, when they jumped in and when it came out.
Exactly. Like one of my friends said, it's a good time to be a nerd.
It is. It's always a good time to be a nerd. Now it's just nice because we have weird conventions where we can all be weird in a room together.
So what fandom specifically are you into?
A lot. Earlier you had mentioned Marvel. That's definitely my forte, X-Men specifically. When I was growing up, I always had an affinity for the X-Men. I remember being in third grade taking one of those weird standardized tests because, those are so helpful in life.
Of course.
And one of the questions was like a racial identity question. And I remember they had all these answers, but there was no selection for like biracial or multiracial, which is what I am. And there was just a box that said other. And like I remember even as a kid being like, what's other? Like non-human? Like does it mean mutant? I'm pretty sure it means mutant. And so in my head it just kind of I bonded a little bit with the X-Men, because it's like sometimes you can feel a little cast aside if you don't fit into a perfect box. And that's what really got me started with them and started that interest watching the cartoon. I mean, I would love to meet Jim Lee. One of my first costumes was the 90s version of Storm from watching that cartoon and having that awesome fandom attachment.
That is awesome. Yeah, let's talk about the X-Men. So did you get into it through comics, or was it mostly from the cartoon show that was going on at the time?
Yeah, it was the cartoon from the 90s. Just every time that that crazy hook for the theme song comes on, I'm like, okay, yes, I'm pumped. I like this. These giant robots, I like them too. And then, as you get older, you read more and find out more, at the action figures and things like that. And then, the movies start coming out and more people start to know who you like, and like, oh, I saw this person on your lunchbox, but now I actually know who this is now. So there's more of a connection. And I guess you could say that's when that fandom starts to grow, especially when you're at that young age. It's not so easy to have the same connectivity that we do now. The internet's opened up a ton of channels. Cosplay's opened up a ton of channels. Other artists, just lots of creative fields that really foster that environment to, make a fandom, to make it thrive.
I remember coming home and watching that cartoon show whenever it came on, and it killed me when I missed a few episodes. Sometimes I couldn't find it or we were out, and trying to follow up with the story sometimes.
Mm.
It's like, what did I miss? How did I miss Morph like coming back?
Yeah. Well, they did a lot of multi-part episodes too.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you've never, read Dark Phoenix and you don't know what's going to happen. I remember that was a huge event and, rightfully so. And you're just like, "Oh my God," you skip an episode, you're like, "What happened to Jean?" Like,
Yep.
but yeah, it makes it exciting. Keeps you on your toes. It's like the preliminary like water cooler talk for like kids. Like, did you see what happened next? Oh, and then you get the cool like next time on the X-Men, and you get your little blurbs, so you have something to look forward to and chat about. And
Mm-hmm.
you get that speculation, which is also a huge part of fandom. Is oh well, here's my fan theory. Well, in my head canon, it's this, and you can develop these whole. I mean, that's how the EU came to be. Was just fandom.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Or you get people writing their own fan fiction with
Mm.
them as a part of the X-Men and going on adventures.
Yeah, I mean, what's not to love about that? It's great because you have the framework of this great story, this great cast, and it makes you want to be a part of it, which is another reason why I am drawn so strongly to them. Is like all of the other groups, specifically Marvel related. You can count them on one hand for like the core groups, the core
Mm-hmm.
teams. But the X-Men, I mean, there's hundreds of mutants. I think in total for Avengers, and I mean, West Coast Avengers and all the different little factions and everything, there's only been about like 50, give or take, but you can always have some new mutant. Even if they're just a one-off character, I just like that environment that they've kind of built. The world building behind mutants, I think, is just really cool and definitely one of Marvel's strong suits.
Who's your favorite X-Men or X-person?
Yeah, isn't that the question of the day? It changes all the time. There's so many. I would say right now, probably Nightcrawler.
Why Nightcrawler?
Oh, Nightcrawler taps into an awesome character trait that I really like, and just me personally, I love duality. I love the fact that he is, this kind and gentle, meek character, but looks like, something that you would not want to go, toe to toe with on your best day.
Mm-hmm.
His abilities, I just even his background is crazy. I like the lineage of mutants. I like that there's a tree of relationships with other characters. The tie-ins are really really what makes it familiar, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would definitely say Nightcrawler for right now. But there's so many. It's definitely hard to choose.
It is, especially with such a large and diverse cast. And when they change up the teams, they always get to really showcase like newer mutants or go back and pull some of the older mutants forward. Not so much now that they've kind of not gone away from the X-Men comics as a whole, but I know that they're doing something now that they're in that new rebooted universe with the X-Men and the mutant gene and everything that's going on with them and the Inhumans.
Well, I think that's why X-Men 92 is so successful right now.
That's what I've heard, so much so.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I actually just finished a Generation X Monet St. Croix, and when I saw that she was making appearances in X-Men 92, I'm like, this I can get behind. This I like. So I was super excited, and it's cool because she's also holding down a team on an Extraordinary X-Men. She's
Hmm.
hanging out with Magneto and Psylocke and all of them. So I'm like, these are just teams of my favorites. Are just like one conglomerate of awesome.
When I was growing up, Nightcrawler was one of my favorites because
Yeah,
I followed the Excalibur comic series for a long time,
yeah.
and it was always him and Kitty Pryde were my two favorites.
Well, they have such a good dynamic, and that's they play very well off of each other. And what's cool about them, and even the Rogue Nightcrawler, kind of like sibling-ish, disjointed type relationship. I
Hmm.
like that they keep it pretty consistent throughout, the comics, throughout even the shows, Wolverine, the X-Men, X-Men Evolution. You see a lot of that, more of like the playful banter side.
Right.
And it's exciting to follow a character through so many different iterations, and including the movies too. You feel attached, and I think that's something also that's the advantage of the fandom versus being a fan of something. Usually there's just one like channel. There's only one source material. It's not like, wow, we can go back, and I mean Nightcrawler was born in 75, so we've got all of these years to see all these different, okay, Cockrum's Nightcrawler, oh, okay, Claremont's Nightcrawler, all the way up into now through, Excalibur, X-Force, and you see that growth, you see that range, and that's what makes it super, it's exciting. You get to see that evolution and be a part of it.
Absolutely. And especially on like newer series such as like the Ultimate Universe, where they got to do a spin on the character, and you started fresh from like Ultimate X-Men #1 and going forward there when like eventually he was introduced and he got a whole like similar but different backstory. And the I mean is just incredible to see and have all these different histories and stories, and especially with X-Men because they are so well loved by comic book readers, by moviegoers, by the people that watch the cartoon show, whether it was like Evolution or the original X-Men cartoon.
Right.
There's just so much there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So they'll always hold a special place for me. That's always going to be my go-to.
Now, I haven't asked this question in a long time, but I'm curious if you had to create like a 4 or 5 person X-Men team, who would you choose to be on that team?
Well, here's my first follow-up question. Villains or heroes?
It's up to you. I mean, you've had so many crossovers between them, like overall between. I mean, Magneto's been on both sides. Sabretooth has been on as well. I mean, it's up to you.
Ooh, let's see. All right, we'll go with the big five. Five is our standard group. So I think you've got to have your. And you know what's funny? I'm going to base this answer off of Marvel Avengers Alliance. It's the only Facebook game I play, but it's awesome. If you play it, it's a turn-based game, and they kind of have different classes. So I'll kind of base it off that. So
Okay.
you need your muscle, you need your bruiser. So I'm definitely thinking that I would put Juggernaut in there
Okay.
because I like the magic angle, and you don't really see magic with brute force combined a lot, like
Right.
that hulking true like brute force. So put Juggernaut on my team. And then you need like your leader type, your tactician. For that, I would probably. I hate Cyclops. Let's just get that out of the way. Hate Cyclops. So I'm gonna go. I'll keep it all in the family. I'll go with Havoc because he led Uncanny Avengers. I don't know if he still is right now because that one kind of fell off the radar for me. So I'll put Havoc on there. It's good to have somebody with energy, like an energy-based power. You need your stealth. You'll need your infiltration. So I'm gonna pick my Kurt Wagner. So he'll be my stealth muscle, and teleporting super handy for your like escape plan. So
Absolutely.
it's good to have your fallback guy when it all goes south. So I'd have Nightcrawler. I'm going to say you got to have your scrapper, so someone that's your brawler that can get in there and get nasty. I'm going to say Monet because she's got the flight, she's got a little bit of the healing factor, she's got the stamina, and she's got the sass, and I feel like you need that for like a good team dynamic. She could keep everybody in their place. So I'll say Monet. And then you need your kind of all around like your you're like World of Warcraft. You need your healer, you need your wizard and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say Professor X.
Okay.
So he's got the wisdom to keep everybody kind of in check, and also it's good to have a telepath. You need that cerebral power too. So I feel like that kind of touches all areas. So that would be my team.
Okay. That is a pretty good team, especially with the crossover with characters that you don't really see interact that much. I mean, thinking back, I don't know if I've ever called like Juggernaut and Monet crossing paths as far as anything that stands out in my mind. I mean, maybe on a big crossover event, but
Right. Yeah, I think that would be cool. I mean, it may happen. There's been so many different X teams. I mean, who's to
Mhm.
say now? And especially now that Fox has finally got their act together and they know how to make a decent movie,
Right.
maybe we'll see more.
Yeah, those movies have been such a blessing for resetting what happened with number 3
Oh,
of the original. I haven't yet seen Apocalypse yet, but I'm hoping to see that soon.
yeah, it's very X-Men. Um, and I feel like it's a very simplified response, but since I feel like we're kind of on the same page when it comes down to the mutants, so maybe you'll know what I'm getting at when I say that, because I don't want to say too much, but I feel like they did everything right. I feel like every character feels like how they should have always been portrayed, and even though
Hmm.
the time frame is a little off, so we're looking at the younger version, so it's kind of precursor of these characters. I feel like they're right on the money with everybody, and that gives me the utmost amount of joy, and I absolutely love it. And I think you'll enjoy it because I know it came out not too long after Civil War, and so it's like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, battle of the Marvel movies. I enjoyed Civil War a lot, but I saw X-Men Apocalypse more just because it had a better flow. It was more watchable. There were more parts that I was eager to see again.
Okay.
I'll leave it
And
at that.
yeah, and there's definitely characters that are included this time where it's almost like finally I'm really happy that they're being represented from, say, getting to see Jubilee in a bigger role, hopefully, and Psylocke.
Yes. I've got a soft spot for that one. Betsy almost was on my list, but I was like, I'll switch it out for Professor X. So we'll leave it at that. I mean, she's very good, and she's definitely got the edge when it comes to tactical fighting as well, and the stealth. But like, I'm gonna go with I'll go with Chuck on this one.
Now, for everyone that's listened to this podcast, they kind of know that I send out like a pre-questionnaire of just questions and finding out what you're into and not into, to kind of guide the conversation. And something stuck out with me when I was looking over your answers as far as something that you would really, 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 really recommend. And it's something called Saga.
Yes.
And I've not read Saga. I've heard about it from another friend of mine who has said that it's like required reading.
hmm
But what is Saga?
Saga is my life force in comics right now. It's so good. Honestly, I can't read it as the issues come out because it gives me a panic attack. I have to read it on trade. Volume 6 just came out last month. It is a space opera. That's how they define it. Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan, and they're a powerhouse of a creative team. Her illustrations and his writing. If you want to talk about diverse characters, they've got it, and it's effortless. I know that's something that we're seeing a lot in comics, and some people on the critic side like, oh, we're feeling a lot of diversity is like shoehorned in. I
Hmm.
mean, that's a whole nother argument, but Saga has that diversity and it's effortless, and it's not just between like humans, it's just all these bizarre and surreal characters that play this part, and all of this colorful backdrop is set ultimately between star-crossed lovers. Um, we're looking at our two main characters that are from warring lands. Well, it's actually one is a planet and one is the moon,
Okay.
and they have a child. That's not a spoiler because they're on the cover of the very first issue, so I'll give you that much. And the narrator of the story is the child. Um, and she kind of walks you through all the things that her parents go through before she's born and as they're happening. I like that it's not just like the hanging timeline where, Maggie Simpson's been 6 months old for 20 years.
Right.
Like she grows up a little bit more each issue and things kind of progress. And the way that they keep characters at the fore and introducing secondary and tertiary characters they almost read like a storyboard versus a comic, which I really enjoy. And the writing is hilarious. It's heartfelt. It's interesting. It's definitely something different that stands apart from anything else that I'm currently reading. Image has a knack for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because my other one that I would recommend right behind Saga would be The Wicked and the Divine. I don't know if I included that one in my list as well, but
You did. You actually put it down in the section of what's a fandom you're into that you think more people should check out.
oh yes, okay, good, yes, yes, yes. So yeah,
You
Image.
are covering your bases here.
You know what? I don't even have the thing up, so I don't even know if I'm following it correctly. I'm just talking. I'm just nerding out.
That is okay.
Perfect. So yeah, that would be my broad strokes of Saga. So definitely pick it up. I think the first trade is still only $9.99 that you can get at at shops. I think they still have it, and
Wow, that's a great price for a trade paperback.
right, yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful artwork and everything. But it's great world building too. It feels like that the traditional not too distant future, but it's also modern, but it's also fantasy, but it's contemporary. It has a really healthy blend of all these different elements that make it stand apart.
Okay. I'll definitely have to check Saga out, especially at that price point. I mean,
Hmm.
you really can't beat under $10 for a trade paperback at this point.
Right, right. And like full color glossy, just physically it's a solid it's a solid trade. I think when they hit volume 3 or 4, they released like a collected hardback, which is also beautiful, but I already had all the trades already, so depending on
Okay.
your investment, you might want to go either way, but definitely pick up the first volume.
Awesome. I'll definitely have to check it out. In fact, I might even be able to pick it up tomorrow.
Awesome.
We shall see.
Yeah. Yeah, I know yesterday I meant to go pick up my box, but I was tardy on it, and now I'm like, oh man, I gotta wait, and I'm gonna miss all my variants because they're gonna be gone.
Oh no.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
So, on top of liking so many different fandoms like Marvel and phenomenal comic series of and I've got to call Saga more like an indie comic because although it's it's not like one of the big two of Marvel and DC, a lot of people maybe don't know about it as much as they should.
Hmm.
But you're also a cosplayer.
I do. I dress up and pretend to be people.
How did you get into cosplay?
Um, Origin story, grew up without Halloween, so I always looked for any chance to put on a costume when I could. High school, it evolved into making my own t-shirts, trying to repurpose things and trying to do something a little bit different. So there was definitely that just seamstress like fashion element of making my own clothes that I thought was neat.
Okay.
And then it was like, well, let's see if we can stretch your skills a little bit. Let's just go from shirts to making like accessories. Like, okay, let's try a belt, let's try gloves and little bits and pieces. And once I kind of had that baseline skill set, I was thinking, I can make an actual costume for something. And yeah, I can, save all my allowance money and go to con and go to these events where I could wear something that I'm making. So I'm fulfilling that weird like tactical desire to like make something. A lot of hobbies you don't really make. It's like, oh, watching TV, video games, things like that. I think there's something that's
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling about, something that you're creating with your own hands and that you're wearing and that you're using is super fulfilling. And I don't know, maybe that's a part of why it's so successful. It's like it's an activity that you can do and you can connect with other people that are doing the same thing, and then you get the satisfaction of using it and wearing it to a con and hearing people say, yeah, you did an awesome job, and having that sort of support, I think it keeps it going and it keeps you wanting to push the envelope to, okay, well, what else can I do? Well, I've done 10 X-Men suits. Okay. I'm tired of sewing X logos onto spandex. Let's graduate. Oh, okay, let's look at props. okay, let's look at prosthetics. Let's look at extensive body paint. Let's look at armor. And it just kind of is an offshoot from there for me to push your limits. And I think that might be true for a lot of people as well.
What are some of your favorite outfits that you've done?
Let's see. I think we'll go back for most recent. It's actually not a comic one. It was a Fallout 4 inspired costume, which is my first video game costume. And I had a dream about it. That, or do you play Fallout, or are you kind of familiar?
I'm so old that I remember playing the first one.
Oh,
But I've not played the new ones because I'm not very good at first person games, first person shooters or action adventure games. I
mhm.
just can't do them.
They're a little bit easier if you're not playing on a console. They're a little bit easier on PC.
Okay.
So it gives you like a little bit more control because I prefer fighting games to console and then everything else on PC. But yeah, so basically my character is this like in the game, well, it's apocalyptic, everything's nasty and dirty
Hmm.
and gross, and in Fallout 4 you have this option of this like sparkling red, like almost like Jessica Rabbit like type dress that's like perfectly pristine, and it's cool because the girls and guys can wear it. And I had this dream that I was like, oh well, because my character has the red dress, and I was like, I like the idea of this completely glamorous like Miss America dress with all this destruction and radiation and nastiness and these brutal looking weapons. Like again, it's the duality thing.
Hmm.
And I had a dream that I was Miss Wasteland, and I was crowned, queen of the wasteland. And so I wore it to San Diego, and people loved it, and they were like, "This is such a cool idea and concept." So I was like, "That's pretty awesome," because I literally just dreamed about it, and I made the costume in 2 days. Um, so that's definitely one of my favorites, just with the backstory and the concept in mind. My other top would probably be my original character in the Star Wars fandom. She's a Twi'lek, and she is her story is based around right after Return of the Jedi. I liked the idea of celebrity and the concept of fame. And do you remember Ula, the
Yes.
green? Okay,
Yep.
so in depth, she was like a celebrity and was like this, great dancer, and that people on all these other planets knew of her. And I was like, that's just such an interesting concept. I kind of want to dig into that more. And I had this idea that my character would be kind of like this servant in this household, and she like learns of this, and it's almost like finding out that, oh, I don't know, like I don't want to say like Britney Spears died or Madonna died or something. They were just like
Hmm.
tossed to the Rancor like without a thought, like not even worrying about it. And I would just be like, this is insane. How could this happen to our people basically? And she slowly is finding out, oh yeah, your planet Ryloth is basically just a slave planet, and your people are essentially currency. And once she starts to find out more of what's happened to her homeworld, she starts to kind of turn in her own house, and eventually leaves and kind of runs with some Mandos and like a crew of other miscreants, two other Twi'leks as well, to reverse the injustices that she feels have been done to her planet and to her people.
That is awesome.
So yeah, thank you. She's a lot of fun. There's always that slightly, funny and kind of comical element to, some moments in Star Wars and with the characters. So within her group that she's in, she's just been this sheltered servant in this household for her entire life. So she has no idea really how to survive, and not really street smart at all. And then everyone else is kind of like looking at her like, all right, well, how do you think you're going to do this? And I'm like, oh, I have no idea. Do you have a weapon? A weapon for what? And they're like, like you need to kind of get up to speed. So there's a fun element of uh, the different communication between these Mandos who are, super ready to fight and handle these problems in a certain way. And then I'm coming at them more from a different, like a political perspective. And I'm like, well, can't we, create a treaty? Can we do this? And they're like, no, we're just going to go in and blow them up. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we have that interesting dynamic. And so as my character grows, each time I wear it to a con, her outfits will change a little bit.
Right.
She gets, a weapon the first time, then it's going to be a bigger weapon. And then, oh, she'll have something that's hidden in addition to like a blaster or something. So it's one that can always evolve and change with me, which is a lot of fun. So I'd put her up there. And my other one, oh, it's so tough because I really love my obscure X-Men. Monet would be in my top, and Omega Sentinel would also be in my top as well. Because no one knows who she is. I had one person recognize me at Phoenix Comic Con 2 years ago when I wore it, and I freaked out, and my entire con was made. I was like, "Yep, I'm done." One person knew who I was. Everyone else is like, "Oh, is that like an anime like plug suit? Are you a robot?" I'm like, kind of, sort of, sure, yeah.
I know that the when I was looking for people to talk to, the image that drew me to want to reach out to you was your Ultimate Wasp,
Oh, awesome, yeah.
because I loved that character so much. And I don't know if I was talking to someone on a podcast about it or just talking to someone about it, but the death of Wasp in the Ultimate Universe was so disappointing.
Yeah, we don't talk about it. That's the one X-Men that can that can not be mentioned.
But I love that outfit, and I loved your steampunk Jasmine.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. When I saw the artist's rendition of all the different princesses, I was like, this is something that I could definitely do. And it wasn't the typical, throw a tiny top hat on it and some goggles and call it a day. There was a reason behind it. And
Right.
Jasmine is the only one with goggles. She's in the desert. She's in the sand. Like that that makes sense for her to have something like that. So I like that it was just enough of the original princess with the steampunk element so that my friends that are in the steam community were like, oh yeah, this is, a solid rendition of this artist drawing. And this 4-year-old girl, barely, coming up to like my hip is like, I love Princess Jasmine. So I'm like, all right, I pleased both parties. This is good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you are the second person that I've talked to out of Arizona, and the first person that I talked to was Ashley. She goes by Kingdom of Ribbon Cosplay, and she is a member of the Justice League of Arizona
Yeah.
charity cosplay group, and you are a member of the Arizona Avengers charity cosplay group.
Yes. Yeah, she does
How,
Raven.
yeah. How did you get involved with the Arizona Avengers?
They pulled me in and recruited me. I was at a con, I think it was 2010, 10 or 11, and they just stopped me. They were like, "Oh, we love you." I was dressed in like a MC, or not MCU, but just a movie verse Storm. And they were like, "Oh, we love your Storm. We'd love for you to join." I'm like, "I could never join. This is no, I'm not good enough for this." And they're like, "Oh yeah." And they were just super supportive, and since day one, I've just been around great people, and we get to do a lot of awesome things, and it really keeps you grounded, and it really gives you good perspective. Sometimes people can get weird and catty in any kind of community, and I'm sure you know where I'm
Mm-hmm.
going for with this, but doing something like that definitely keeps it fun, and that's what should be at the fore of your mind every time you're putting on a ridiculous spandex and vinyl outfit. It's like, all right, we're all over 10 years old. Let's rethink our let's rethink things.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah, we are almost out of time. So, where can people go to find you if they either want to look at your costumes or just follow your progress or just connect with you on social media?
Yeah. Facebook is my primary engine right now. So you can go to facebook.com/Sara, and that's Sara Moni, Moni cosplay. And you can use that same handle for Instagram. Twitter, I am Crayola Kid, and that's Crayola with a K. So a little bit different for the Twitter handle, but I think if you type in Sara Moni, it should bring me up, and you can
Okay.
see all of my stuff there. And yeah, have fun. Feel free to shoot me a question, anything. I get people that ask, like tips on how to do something. So I'm happy for any questions or any comments, things like that. It's always welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and working with me on time zones and learning more about them as I continue to progress with learning all about how Arizona does not change their time for anyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you know what, David? I would change time for you.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.